Since 1994, the world of Killer Instinct has delivered brutal battles, futuristic warriors, and a rhythm all its own. A franchise that blends science fiction with dark mysticism, Killer Instinct is known for its distinct characters: advanced assault cyborgs, reanimated skeletons, demonic warlords, every one capable of monstrous combos and ultra-violence. Almost all are trapped between power and control, their fates twisted by Ultratech, the shadowy mega-corporation orchestrating the chaos behind the Killer Instinct tournament. Among those touched by the schemes of Ultratech are two opposing elemental forces. One is Glacius, born of an ancient race of interstellar marshals from beyond the stars, alien in both form and philosophy, a being of precision and balance. He is forced to fight after his ship crash lands on planet Earth. The other is Cinder, once human, now a being of living fire. Reckless and egotistical, his DNA was twisted by Ultratech into something more powerful and unstable. These are their stories, threads of secrecy, betrayal, and transformation woven through every era of Killer Instinct. Two elemental forces destined to collide. And it begins with Glacius, the ancient marshal from beyond the stars. Long before anyone on Earth even knew what lay beyond the solar system, the planet was being watched. Glacius hails from a distant sector of the galaxy, a member of an ancient alien race devoted to enforcing interstellar law. These beings, often referred to only in fragments by their observers, are not conquerors or diplomats, but guardians of dangerous technologies and cosmic order. But in the original Killer Instinct, Glacius simply crash-landed on Earth, captured and forced into the Killer Instinct tournament by Ultratech. Afraid of what they had found, his captors made him fight in order to prove that the alien was an inferior being. The shady corporation would send one of their own fiery experiments into the tournament, specifically to target him, the convicted criminal, now known as Cinder. Cinder is, however, defeated and killed by the Iceman, who finally escapes Ultratech and the planet, vanishing into the stars. The narrative switches things up for the Glacius that appears in KI2. With the death of the Titan idol in the first tournament at the hands of the Orchid, a time warp is set off, sending some of the first game's characters back into the past. The Glacius in this timeline, however, is an ancestor of the Glacius we know from the first game. When a distress signal is sent out by others of his kind who have been captured by followers of a demonic Titan, Glacius answers the call and sets out to find his people on Earth. Glacius has multiple endings in this game, all of which depend on how you interact with the lycanthrope Saberwolf and his stage. This can lead to triumph, tragedy, or an uneasy alliance. In one, he is simply unable to find his people and leaves Earth alone and frustrated. In another, Glacius is unable to locate his kin, but Saberwolf's plight, the Wolfman's search to cure his lycanthropy and quell the beast within, prompts the alien to help him. In return, Saberwolf agrees to aid Glacius in his search for his captured people. Glacius can also be reunited with his people, but if he is spared an enemy, the joy he gains in their reunion is short-lived. And finally, Glacius is able to find the captured members of his race and leave Earth. The rescue mission is a complete success. In the series' reboot, Killer Instinct 2013, Glacius and his story evolves. He is now a galactic marshal, upholding the 88 decrees of the Alliance worlds, and embodies an archetype rarely seen in fighting games. A silent guardian, fighting not out of ego or for glory, but for duty. He is also one of a race of powerful telepathic beings, who have the ability to bend simple molecular structures to their will, allowing them to encase their bodies in all manner of protective shells. Glacius' journey to Earth was not one of exploration or conquest, but of recovery. A fragment of his species' technology was now left unattended on Earth, technology he himself had been forced to leave behind on a previous mission. Unprotected on a planet dominated by Ultratech, a global megacorporation whose goals had no ethical limits, this was a crisis. His people's technology was never meant to be wielded by a brutal species, still struggling against its own self-destruction. Attacked by Ultratech, Glacius' ship crash-lands on Earth, and his ship's power source is stolen. Stranded, he must now track down the stolen technology. Suspecting Ultratech's involvement, he infiltrates their headquarters in search of his technology, and comes across a captured Native American, Eagle, brother to Thunder, who was being used in the development of Ultratech's Fulgor cyborgs. Glacius saves Eagle, taking him back to his ship, and even melds some of his technology with his body, helping him become strong again. This act means Glacius has condemned himself to death back in his home system, as it violates the 88 decrees of his kind. But the alien sees it as a small price to pay in his fight against Arya, due to her plans to create bodies made up of alien and human DNA, in which to house her own consciousness. The Iceman's story endings are once again tied to various conditions. If Glacius ultra combos every opponent in his story run, his ending shows him convinced that the inhabitants of the Earth pose a great threat, and so evacuates the planet before detonating his lost technology. Decimating the planet, Glacius is sure that he made the right decision. If he ultras Sidera, but not everybody else, then the defeated female assassin will activate Glacius' lost power core that is paired with an Ultratech device. As it opens up a dimensional rift, Sidera weakly states that her mission is complete and the path is open, but to where we do not know. If you simply complete the storyline, Glacius removes any evidence of his presence on Earth. Repairing his ship, he continues on his journey to fix any damage that the influence of his lost technology has had. Throughout KI's story, Glacius doesn't fight for revenge, he fights to prevent further corruption. His battles are cold not because he lacks emotion, but because he understands the cost of losing control. In a universe filled with ambition, greed, and power, someone has to remain the hand that tempers it all. Regardless of his story ending, it seems that Sidera was successful in acquiring Glacius' DNA, as it would be used in one of Ultratech's most shady experiments. The company would fuse it into a decorated but troubled former soldier, Ben Ferris, creating the volatile fire entity known as Cinder, a human-alien hybrid. Cinder became not just another opponent for Glacius, but a living symbol of what happens when dangerous tools are wielded by those without restraint. In both games he appears in, Cinder wasn't chosen, he was used. Whether as a convicted criminal or a captured paramilitary contractor, Cinder, aka Ben Ferris, was living on borrowed time, disposable in the eyes of the world. But to Ultratech, that made him the perfect candidate. A man with nothing left to lose is easy to reforge into something dangerous. In the original Killer Instinct, Cinder was a convicted criminal, who Ultratech gave the chance of freedom to, for a price. Agreeing to participate in their experiments, he was turned into a being of living flame. He would then be ordered to enter the Killer Instinct tournament, and publicly defeat the alien Iceman, Glacius. Canonically, he fails, and is slain by the alien. But his story ending shows him winning the tournament, only to be met by a squad of police cars outside the gates of Ultratech. Having no intention of being confined once again, he makes use of his new powers, and easily evades capture. In the reboot Killer Instinct 2013, Cinder has been fully reimagined, and given a name, Ben Ferris. As a kid, Ben was often labeled as troubled, stealing and fighting through his childhood, growing up in a bad family and in a bad neighborhood. The truth was, though, he enjoyed doing those things. But his actions landed him in juvenile detention, and at 18 he was given a choice: go back out into the world and spend the rest of his life in and out of jail, or join the US Army. Ben signed up and found that the military gave him an outlet for everything he enjoyed, excelling so much that he made selection to the Elite Special Forces group at 20 years old. 2 years later, and he was the most decorated soldier in the US Army for his age. But the medals and accolades meant nothing to Ben. who only enjoyed the adrenaline rush that the job gave him. The one thing missing in his life, however, was a payday. At 31, he left the army to go into the much more lucrative world of corporate espionage, which would eventually lead him to being hired to infiltrate Ultratech and find all he could on a project codenamed Cinder. He would be captured by Ultratech while trying to uncover their secrets and given a choice by the company's AI CEO, Aria. Become the first test subject for Project Cinder, or die. For Ben, the choice was obvious, but it meant he had to endure brutal procedures, using technologies not even Aria understood. His DNA would be recombined with the DNA from an extraterrestrial, and after enduring months of torturous experimentation, Ben was destroyed, and Cinder was born. The new entity was part human, part alien, but contained Ben's intelligence and skills. He was, however, unable to control the energy which radiated from his body, and so Ultratech constructed a special skin suit, allowing him to direct and channel his new powers at will. No longer a nameless experiment, Ben Ferris now embraced what he'd become. Cocky and theatrical, he works for Ultratech, not because he believes in their cause, but because they made him feel invincible. Cinder would be tasked by Aria to handle Ultratech's various inconveniences and liabilities, including those that leaked incriminating evidence, as well as the Amazonian Maya and her allies who oppose Ultratech. He also crosses paths with Glacius, who is furious at having had his DNA stolen and used to create what he sees as a bastardization of his race. True to his egotistical nature, Cinder sees himself as the superior lifeform. Eventually, he is tasked by Aria to take out her top lieutenant, Sidera, following a slew of disappointments. Once she is defeated, Cinder becomes Aria's new top lieutenant, entrusted with commanding the company's most clandestine operations. However, he knows that, just like Sidera, he too may be seen as a liability one day. An amusing thought for him, for he believes that Aria cannot stop the sun from rising. Ben Ferris was a man who played with fire his entire life, but when Ultratech turned him into Cinder, he became something worse. A blazing inferno that believes it's in control. Glacius and Cinder are more than just elemental opposites. They are philosophical foils, reflections of how power can be revered or abused. Glacius fights with restraint, purpose, and respect for the technology that he carries. He is a guardian not of worlds, but of balance. To him, his people's technology is a sacred tool that requires a responsible hand to wield. He didn't arrive on Earth as a warrior, but once here, he fought to protect others from Ultratech's reckless exploitation of alien knowledge. Cinder, meanwhile, is the result of that exploitation. A man burned alive and rebuilt, repurposed into a living weapon, and reveling in the power he now wields. One is an inadvertent exile with a code, the other a dangerous thrill-seeker with no leash. Their powers may clash, ice against fire, but their true conflict is ideological. Glacius seeks to correct what's gone wrong. Cinder is what's gone wrong, and he's learned to enjoy the chaos. In a world where Ultratech writes the rules, they are proof the power is never neutral. It either serves the hand that guards it, or destroys the one that wields it. Glacius fights for the balance his people swore to uphold. Cinder fights for the thrill of watching that balance collapse. And when they meet, it's not just elements that clash, but visions of what power should be. In the chaos stirred up by Ultratech, few rivalries burn as brightly or chill the blood as Glacius and Cinder. One is a noble protector, wielding their powers with reverence. The other is a man-made monster, embracing the inferno of unchecked ambition. They aren't just fire and ice, they're what happens when power is stolen versus when it's earned, when duty collides with destruction. If the timeline is good to us, we may one day revisit the world of Killer Instinct. So, let me know in the comments. What do you think lies ahead for Glacius and Cinder? And if they battle in the future, will the cold light of justice overcome the heat of chaos? or will both be consumed in the war Ultratech has set in motion. If you enjoyed this dive into Killer Instinct's elemental titans, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more videos diving into fighting game lore and rivalries. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the coldest warriors fight the hottest battles, so make sure to always have that killer instinct.